brick wall hard limiter on the output. And this is for really, really loud coughs, kind of disaster management here. It's not terribly musical sounding. When it kicks in, it's essentially just stopping the signal, which is more or less creating a square wave. So that's not a very musical thing. The speakers don't produce square waves too well, so we're not going to want to turn this so that it comes on all the time, just at those very super peak points where it hurts so much anyway that this is helping keep that pain level down. Center button is stereo couple. Okay, I went through this whole section here. Stereo couple actually allows this channel settings to be applied to channel number 2. Now these knobs are not functional. So that application would be if this were being used in a left-right stereo mix. You could set one side and then the other side is set exactly the same. You don't have to go and get all the knobs tweaked just the same as channel 1. This does it for you. In our application, we're doing one mic on this side and one mic on this side, so we're using it as a 2-channel unit. Make sure that that isn't plugged in, because these knobs will affect that side if they're plugged in. VCR, it's a VCR. Works like a VCR. What more can I say? I can say more. So VCR is run into the board through the Extron switcher, which is over in my next rack, which we'll get to in just a minute, and we'll look at that. Phone system. There's a phone system that allows calls to be made and heard through the PA. So the person online can hear the talker through a microphone, the lavalier, and then the person talking on the phone outside can be heard through the PA system here. That's what that is, and that is run through channels up on the main board as marked. And then finally down at the bottom there's a patch bay that has the ability to send signals to the various pockets on stage and on the sidewalls. And this is what we will employ to use the in-ear monitor patches to the various locations on stage. So this is the output of monitor 1. Right now we have into tie 1, and then upstage, on stage, tie 1 has an in-ear monitor system plugged into it. So that just gives us the ability to send line signals, line level, up to the stage and then plug in a preamp or a headphone amp up there. We're getting through the sound system here at GFA, talked about the board and the effects and compressor limiter. Now we're going to go down to the other rack underneath the board and talk about tape decks and switchers and the things that are down there. So we come down to rack directly underneath the board, and we have another power filter that the items are plugged into. So as I said before, you want to make sure that the switch is on here, and if it's not lighting up, check the breaker. If the breaker's fine, then just of course make sure that the rest of the system is turned on with the key sequencer. It does have pull-out lights, so if you're working in the auditorium when the lights are dimmed, you can pull these out. There's an on-off switch here, and there is a dimmer control that allows you to adjust the intensity. It's important to remember that this is the light control and that this is the power control, and if you switch the power control, you're going to hear a big thump and everybody's going to turn around and look at you because there won't be any sound coming out. So dimmer control and power switch over on this side as labeled lights. So we'll put that in because we don't need them right now. We'll turn them off. The next item here is the Extron switcher. This is taking the different sources from the media, computer, VCRs, the DVD player that's in the rack, and it just assigns that selection to the channel labeled media up on the mixer. So what we're able to do then with this is, rather than having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 channels eaten up by these different sources, we're never going to play 2 DVDs at the same time, typically. So we can select that, or the VCR, or an aux, or a PC, and then just feed the audio up to that channel. It is doing video switching as well, going to the projector for those things such as DVD and VCR and the PC outputs. So that as well as switching the audio, it is switching the video to go up to the projector. There's front panel auxiliary inputs here. If somebody comes in with a DV tape or something that they just have to plug in here, that you could actually plug in from a DV camcorder. An external computer could be plugged in here, a laptop or something, just actually on this panel. There are some adjustments for the image, color detail, tint, brightness, contrast. So if you're brave and you feel the need to adjust, you can. Otherwise, I'd say hands off. Don't mess with that stuff. Tape deck and CD player recorder. So in one unit, there's the tape deck for those that still have tapes. Tapes can be recorded or played. And then CD is both the recorder and player, and labeled as functions are as labeled. Primary ones being open and close, actually does open and close, and then play to do that. For the recording levels, you've got your record buttons and then an input level here that once this is set, we're probably not going to have to mess with this a whole lot, and I would like to get this dotted to at a nominal level so that just in case somebody does come and bump it, we'll probably go again at my favorite, which is 12 o'clock. As just a nominal setting, then you can adjust it if need be from that area. Below the tape deck, there's a distribution antenna system for the wireless that are in the rack here. Rather than having individual sets of antennas, 2 per unit, the units are plugged into a distro, and then the antennas are mounted up on front of the cabinet, so that makes it a little less messy in the back of the rack. These are wireless units, and they're labeled as they are labeled up on the board, 1 through 4. The advice on wireless units, we talked a little bit about who controls turning them on, turning them off, and probably is a good idea to just make sure that the batteries are fresh every time you use a wireless. There are settings on the wireless units that allow you to change the channels, and if you have a wireless that is not working, it is always potential that somebody flipped one of the buttons, went in here and just started poking things and maybe got this off channel. So you want to make sure that your transmitter and your receiver are set at the same channel. So if I go into mode here, I can get through and select my channels, and I'm not going to do anything there. I'll just leave it where it was. So that may be something to check if you don't have a signal working on your channel. There it is, now it's set. All right, DVD player is for playing DVDs, and it's warming up here. It's loading. Again, it's labeled, the functions are labeled as to what it does. This would be an indication here that if you're going to play a DVD, probably a good idea to put it in and try it, just to make sure, A, that it is a DVD, and B, that it's the right DVD, and kind of get a feel for how long it takes to start up. It's not instantaneous, so there's going to be that long kind of, is it going to come on? Pause before it actually comes on, potentially, if you don't have it set right. And that certainly is true of the VCR, too. Whenever you play VCR, make sure that it's queued up, ready to go. At the beginning, not 20 seconds into it, not 20 seconds before it, where you get the blips and countdown. Just so it looks like you know what you're doing back here. Vents, and then there's a patch bay at the bottom of the rack that is wired through the floor channel up to areas near the stage, pockets that allow cameras to be plugged in. It'll feed the video signal back and the audio signals. So there's some flexibility as to camera placement. If you have a special event, you could get a close-up camera on the stage, or even, I find kind of effective sometimes to have a camera on stage pointing out at the audience is kind of neat. And that works better than using stock footage, so you don't get like people in sweaters in August from your stock December footage. You actually have the crowd that was there during the event. Just those little things some people notice. And I think that's it for rack number 2. Phone system. We're going to talk about the phone system first of all. We already talked about the phone system down there in the rack, but we didn't talk about the phone system up here. So if we have a cut of the phone system, a shot of the phone system, if I want to make a call, and Stephen may have to help me out here. Do I hit call? Ah, very good. See, that's why I'm here, to test people. Your call cannot go through. I should have Stephen show this because I'm not familiar with it, but it essentially is now. Turn the channel on with labeled phone, and then hit call. And like everything else, you're probably going to want to go through this first and make sure your levels are correct before you blast people with a dial tone. And then it works just like a regular telephone keypad to dial. I just paged somebody, probably in Alaska, with that, and I can drop the call. So that's how you dial out. You'll reach the person, and this handset phone is the same line if you need to pick up for whatever reason and kill the sound on the PA system. You could still have it here before you shut the call down. Now, going to the caller on the other end of the line, whatever microphone you have up, whether it's the lavalier mics or the handheld wireless mics or any of the other microphones, you can have go out to the phone line. So typically you wouldn't have the worship team playing over the phone. You would just have a caller and a talker answering questions. So you're probably going to want to just have one or two. If you have 2 commentators up, I guess you could have 2 up at a time, and then everything else should be muted or off. All right, we're going to move on to the lights. Lighting control system. Currently, there aren't any presets, or there aren't any usable presets set up on the dimmer board. It has the capability of doing different scene settings, different intensities of the different zones of lights. But at this time, we're just going to talk about the channel faders in the center and how these are actually hooked up to different banks of lights in the auditorium. And probably killing the video right over me here. What we set up on stage was, part of the problem was that there was a lot of shadows being created by the light placement, and particularly when the speakers would come down off the front of the stage, there wasn't a whole lot of light focused on that area. So we moved 6 of the lights essentially to cover a talker in the center of the stage, whether they're up on the platform or down in front, and that's center plus about 4 feet or so are in pretty good, well-lit zones. They can go out of that and they'll start to get darker as they go beyond that 4 feet. But anywhere they are kind of in the center of the stage, either on stage or on the floor, they're pretty well lit. And that is, our stage lights really are just these controls here that I've got control over the worship on stage, and then I've got control on these 2, and they're labeled flood house, and flood center is the stage. Flood house and flood house are the stage up and stage down lights, left and right. So probably the best way to operate this would be to get the lighting set in the room so that it's comfortable, not too dim, bright enough so you can read if you need to read your Bible, not so bright that people are going to feel like French fries in here, and then be able to get the worship settings up on stage so you can see the worship leader and the players during worship. Important to keep the light at a level that isn't going going to be washing out the screen, and we've got them adjusted pretty well so there's no direct light hitting the screen. But you know, just be aware of that. If you have a huge shadow or you've got some sort of a white blotched, washed out area that may be caused by one of the stage lights, and to adjust it slightly. And then during worship, you've got the worship up. During the teaching, you're probably going to want to bring the worship down, and then adjust your teaching levels as what looks good here. There's probably enough light now for the video. We're going to find out for sure the next time we get somebody up there to do a talk, and we'll see what the quality's like. So that's it for the light board.